Well, this is the continuation of the lone killer, lone nut gunman that had to be perpetuated throughout the period of James O'Reilly's incarceration.
Absolutely. It never, because Ray insisted virtually from the day of the plea that there was a conspiracy, they felt compelled to continue to plant these stories. They went on for a number of years at a very intense level, and then it then sort of petered off. But in the first year after the plea of guilty, Anderson wrote a number of columns saying there just wasn't any conspiracy. Max Lerner wrote columns saying Ray was the killer, there's nothing to the conspiracy theory. Another example of how they fuzzied it was even at the time of his plea. There was a story on the Washington Post, which I think I've given you a copy of, where they said, no evidence of any plot, jury is told. Now, that isn't really what the jury was told, if you read the story, is that the prosecution was not presenting any evidence of a plot, which is very different from saying, of course, they didn't present any evidence that there wasn't a plot either. And yet, if you look at that headline, it looks like something has been said and done in court showing the jury there was no plot. And that's not what happened. It wasn't discussed either way. And there was a story, I believe, the next week in the Washington Post where the title of the story was Ray Alone Still Talks of a Plot, which again, journalistically was ridiculous because there were millions upon millions of Americans talking about whether there was a plot. And a story which, tries to create the impression that James Earl Ray was stark raging man, was the only person in America who thought there might have been a plot. That campaign went, and in fact, they then said, well, what we really meant was that he's the only person who's officially involved in the proceedings who thinks there's a plot, everyone else doesn't. And even that wasn't true because the next day there was a story in the papers that the judge here, the judge at the time, Judge Battle, wasn't sure and thought maybe there had been a plot, and it certainly made it clear that under Tennessee law, if co-conspirators came up or were arrested or indicted, they would be subject to trial.
Let me pass this article to you. I want you to look at that, Mr. Schaap. That's an article that appeared in the New York Times on Column 1 on the 17th of November 1978, right at the time when the both Ray brothers were being questioned and examined in public before the House Select Committee on Assassination. And that article speaks of an independent investigation of the New York Times, by the New York Times, and the FBI, and the Select Committee, into an Alton, Illinois bank robbery, an investigation which never took place, which has now been established. Is that an example of the type of misinformation that one finds in an attempt to train the public mind?
Oh, absolutely. Given the fact that subsequently it was shown that they were not suspects in that robbery, the first thing it means is that the reporter is saying some things which had to have been simply fed to him and not checked. Because if you're saying something happened which in fact very, very basic journalism would have proven didn't happen, you are either doing it on your own to spread some disinformation, which is extremely unlikely, or you're being asked to put a spin on something that you know is going to be coming out. Again, I don't know what happened in Alton, Illinois, but if, as I understand there's been testimony, it is clear that the Ray brothers were not suspects in that case, this story is clearly disinformation because it's designed to make it appear not only that they were suspects in that case, but that they did it. And to make it appear that 2 investigations confirmed that. Whereas, since we know it wasn't true, it's impossible that either investigation could confirm it.
Let me ask you, finally, it's been a long road. How you regard, and what is your explanation for the fact that there has been such little national media coverage of this trial and this evidence and this event here in this Memphis courtroom, which is the first trial ever to be able to produce evidence on this assassination? What has happened here that Muddy Wurlitzer is not sounding, but is in fact totally silent, almost totally silent?
Oh, but as we know, silence can be deafening. The disinformation is not only getting certain things to appear in print, it's also getting certain things not to appear in print. I mean, the first thing I